Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello and welcome. Thanks for coming to another episode of DevOps Accents. Since you are already here, make sure to like. And if this is not the first time you are listening to us, make sure to be subscribed. We are MKDev, where we provide DevOps, data, and AI consulting and engineering services. And here on DevOps Accents, we discuss all things around industry. And today we are once again the three of us in a classic cast with Pablo and Kirill. Please welcome. Hi, guys. And today I wanted to talk to discuss a recent report that Flexera released. Flexera is a company that provides SaaS-based IT management solution for enterprises and other companies. And recently they released another State of the Cloud report. If you don't know, our listeners, that's a report that they assemble every year or so. And this report analyzes the current state of cloud usage, the adoption by the organization, and also various trends across the industry. And this time they surveyed more than 700 or so companies. It's quite large and extensive. I recommend reading it, and I will post a link in the description so that you could read it too. And I know you guys haven't had a chance to read the report yet, and that's okay because I will fill you in on the details. There were a few main things that interested me about it that I took away from reading the report. And one of the main things that really stood out for me from this report is how cloud cost management has kind of taken over as the top concern for organizations. It's even surpassed security concerns, which, has been the big focus for the past decade or so. And the report highlights that the second year in a row, managing cloud spend has become the number one challenge. And this really shows that companies keep expanding their cloud usage, and the whole process of managing those costs is becoming probably more complicated. So I wanted to dive into here, and there are some specific numbers, and they revealed something pretty significant. Among that, for example, cloud waste is still sitting at around 27%. That's the money spent on resources that aren't really being used effectively, and I think that's still a big number. Even though it's a bit better than last year, it's clear that there's still a lot of money being, left on the table. Plus, the report notes that public cloud spending is going over budget by an average of 15%. This kind of overspend is becoming more of a norm than an exception. Which is why the company's FinOps is getting so much attention. And I wonder how this matches your expectations and your observation with what you are currently working with and what we are getting with our clients, with our customers, and with the industry in general.
I'm surprised you said it's 27%, right? 27% of companies overspent.
Yes, I mean the cloud waste is at 27%. Yes,
I would expect it to be even more. I think lots of companies just do not realize that they waste too much money on the cloud than they should, because almost every company has potential to optimize their cloud spend, either because they are just they just forgot to turn or delete some resources. There are many cases where, like in case of Amazon, for example, lots of storage just lays around uncleaned up because people forget that kind of every gigabyte of storage costs money, or because the companies use incorrect services that do not really match their requirements and just overspend on those.
Pablo, do you have experience witnessing how the companies don't realize they're spending too much?
Yes, but at the end is maybe one of the problem too is that there are many people with access to the cloud, and you can see many places where the experiments could be that is the 20% of the expenses in a company. So I'm going to play with that. I'm going to do this MVP, this POC, and at the end, this is one of the expenses I was checking in this report right now, and I was checking that, for example, in Google Cloud, 17% of the use of Google Cloud, it was for expenses for training, not for training, for experiments. And this is one of the costs, but it's true that many times I'm going to make a cluster. Okay, the cluster is done. But you don't know what is the size of the cluster. You never check that. It's something that, but at the end, it's the same thing that happened in a house. And the same thing that happened in workplace when you spend money many times, when it's not your money, it's the family money, then you don't check too much, and this is what happened, Many times the people in the company spend and spend and spend, and you never check the amount of money, unless that there is someone in the company who is telling you, okay, you spend this week 10,000 or 20,000. But what Kirill is telling is true, is there are many companies doing expenses in, and they can reduce not only 27. I think that they can reduce even more in many companies. Maybe 27% is the average of all the companies in this report.
What is the nature of the experiments that you mentioned? Is it like some engineer sitting on the desktop thinks like, oh, there is a new feature, and I want to try it, and maybe I'm trying to try something new with a new feature, or I will change some settings here and there to see how it will work in terms of performance, and they do not realize how this will affect cloud spend and how it will.
But imagine these days that everyone wants to play with a model. So one person who can say, okay, I'm going to start a GPU machine, and then I'm going to start this machine, and I'm going to test whatever thing that I want to test. And then it's a weekend, and I did not turn off the machine. And the machine is on during the weekend. And maybe it wasn't one machine, it was 10 machines. So maybe you can spend per machine 3K per month. So if you have 10, it's 30K. If you use that for 10 days, at the end it's 10K. So, and you made a little stupid experiment to test something that, okay, you wanted to do, I want to do that for the company. And at the end, really, you want to do maybe something for the company, but you want to do something for you too, because you are never going to do that in your own account, and you are never going to start this kind of machines. And this is the kind of experiment. Another kind of experiments is the company, they want to do a new application, a new concept, and they need to do a POC, and then they need to test if this application is, or this concept is going to work, or they want to test a new database, or they want to test something. But to do this test, you need to start resources. And when you are in this level, you are not monitoring too much these resources, and then you don't care too much. And you can start 3 or 4 at the same time to do these different tests, and then you are going to destroy everything. But the problem is that these experiments are expensive too.
I'm wondering who are the people who should decide whether you are allowed to do these experiments or not, or calculate the result. Probably because another part of the report in this cost management section of the report, this report makes is that nearly half, like 50, a little bit more than 50% of the organization surveyed now have a dedicated FinOps teams with another 20% planning to establish one in the next year or so, which makes like 70% of organizations are aware that they need someone, they already have someone, or they need someone who will oversee the cloud spend. And I think that this growth in FinOps teams show that organizations are kind of recognizing the need for a more structured approach to managing cloud cost. And it's not just about cutting costs, right? It's about like optimizing spending in a way that aligns with business goals. And it's not entirely clear for me how this might work, because you need to enforce some kind of regulations on the team on these experiments or changes. And this kind of regulations, they obstruct the innovation, right? Like, and how this works and what is the right things to do here, and who is the person who can make this kind of decision making. Like, you should not do that because we will have overspend. How do you even know that? How you can even predict such things?
I didn't see so far dedicated FinOps teams, luckily, and I think if we will start seeing FinOps teams in the companies, then we went into the wrong direction. Like when we started creating DevOps teams, even though it's also the wrong name. But FinOps is a framework, right? It's the framework that defines how all the things related to cloud costs primarily, or the infrastructure costs and IT costs, are kind of communicated through many different stakeholders or personas, because everyone in the company is involved. So, for example, the job of the finance department is maybe to clearly communicate the budgets that you have for your cloud infrastructure, and not communicate them to, for example, managing director, but to make it clear to infrastructure IT teams that, okay, we have this kind of cost of goods. We have, like, one of our users gives us whatever $40 per month, so we can actually spend on our infrastructure, on our IT, more than $30 per user, or that we can only dedicate like 20-30K per month on our cloud infrastructure. And that's something that really happens, especially in the companies. You will not see that often a clear definition of what the budget is. So, and that's kind of the job of non-IT but money-related parts of the company and the leadership. But then also part of this framework is every engineer is costs aware. So when you develop new feature, you need to know that, okay, if I am adding something that will double the traffic, I need to be aware that doubling the traffic also increases the costs, and be aware which parts of infrastructure are responsible for the traffic and how much you pay for this. And then the same for infrastructure team, of course, because they also need to be conscious about the cloud spending, not necessarily trying to always save, but always knowing that whatever you do in the cloud results in some costs. So you cannot just do things. You need to work with developers, you need to work with infrastructure, with finance, with product to forecast and quantify how much you spend, collect the data, make it available. And simple things like if you have multiple applications, you need to have an easy way to see how much each application costs, with like cost allocation tax on Amazon, again with the budgets and other means for the other cloud providers. So it shouldn't be the team. It should be, it's not the culture. So it's because it's about finance. It's a culture of handling your money well, but it needs to be end to end, and it cannot be just moved to one team that goes around and beats money out of the other teams.
Or like it's some kind of person in the company who advocates for financial literacy among the team, from the stakeholders to engineers, making sure everybody understand how it works and how money is spent. Because like from your experience, guys, how many companies like overall make this kind of calculations at all, how much of infrastructure cost we should spend per user? Like, is that a common thing, or it's still rare?
I think cost per user or cost per transaction is still rather rare, because that's really tough to calculate, especially if you have software as a service and you have many parts of the infrastructure. Yeah, it's hard to say how much, because you have, for example, base cost of whatever your Kubernetes cluster that does not change too much for per user, because it kind of accommodates for whatever 500,000 users, let's say. But then each user can upload files, and then you need to calculate how many files each user uploads, and then how much you pay for the storage. But it becomes more and more apparent that companies in the last 1-2 years are way more attentive to their cloud spend. And normally it looks like someone from the upper levels comes and says, okay, now we need to cut costs. So it doesn't look like introduction of proper FinOps principles. It's more like, oh shit, like we're in this economical situation in the world that we actually need to be aware that, I don't know, we should not spend maybe a few millions per year on AWS, and we should find a way to optimize it.
But we need to check too the kind of company, no? Because if this is a SaaS, that this is only a cloud SaaS, and all the users, I don't know, imagine whatever game, whatever application, whatever thing, at the end, if everything in the infra is dedicated to cloud, these companies, they can think, okay, maybe there is no problem if I spend so much in the cloud, because at the end, this is what we are, no? And there is another kind of companies, imagine a company in the bank, or these other kind of companies that really are not purely dedicated, they didn't born to be used in the cloud. Then these kind of companies, they can have more problems to have expenses in the cloud. So everything depends of the company. And this way to calculate how much money do I spend, because it's totally different. Because imagine a bank that is telling, I spend 30 million every year in the cloud. But imagine a company who is a SaaS with 50 million of users, and they're telling, I am spending 50 million in the cloud. So it's completely different in the way that you can calculate how much do you spend in the cloud, if this is good for the company, because in the SaaS it's completely simple to do the calculation. So you spend this amount, maybe it's $1 per user per year, maybe we charge to the user $30. So you can do different kind of calculation, because there is a direct line of the amount of users with the amount of expenses, because everything is in the cloud. But in another kind of company that I use cloud to have different services to help the customers, and it's not the of the company who is in the cloud, then it's something different. This may be some of the problems, because not always it's simple to do this relation between the expenses in the cloud and the income that you get in the company, and do this. Okay, this is good, this is bad for the company.
We have a video, by the way, in our channel about not hypothetical, but real example of how we can calculate the cost per user, because we have this series of making a product about transcription. We have like a separate video just about how much it costs us to process one paid transcription. So how much we charge the user and how much it actually costs us to transcribe audio file and give the text to the user and pay for the compute for handling this. And another thing with the cost, and what I think is a bit hard for startups, is that usually every cloud provider gives lots of money to the startups for free. And I saw situations where Amazon says like, get like 50,000 for your cloud infrastructure, like just free credits for 2-3 years. And what happens quite often is that when you have free money, you don't really realize, you don't have an incentive to pay that much attention how much you spend on the infrastructure. And then in 2-3 years, you figure, we run out of credits and our infrastructure costs us like 10K per month, even though it could cost 2K per month, but the company just never really looked into how to properly spend this money, because this money worked for free for 2 or 3 years.
But these free credits allow you to look back and analyze how much you spend, how the growth worked, and project and predict the spend.
Yeah, but you're in this mode, especially like first 6-12 months, where you probably don't really want to over-analyze and over-check how much you spend, because you're like, okay, whatever it costs, we will just create resources, create infra, scale, because you're a startup. You're in this phase where you need to spend money to be able to grow, and it applies also to the cloud. So then you have all the historical data of how much you spent during this period of time using these free credits, but usually you pay enough attention when it's too late, because maybe you think, okay, in 2 years when we will run out of free credits, our company will be already a unicorn company, so we will not care that much about this particular cost. So it kind of delays the moment of decision.
And something else, many times when the company start with the 2 or 3 or 4 co-founders, plus one person who knows about the cloud. Because you don't have money to pay 100,000 or 200,000 to an expert in cloud. So, and this person create components, create objects, create themes, and the company grow with all this base. And then many times the company at the end is like a mess, but it's working because the idea is fantastic, and the code is pretty good, and the people like that, but the mess that is down there, is crazy, and the people is starting to add more and more mess on this top, and at the end you cannot, it's like everything is interconnected. It's not simple to say stop, let's going to fix that, and then we continue growing in a correct way. This is super difficult, and then you do that, as Kirill says before, when you're in a mature moment, when you say, okay, now we can stop, we can fix this problem, and during this moment you're growing, and you can see many companies with many years with this kind of mess that you cannot imagine from outside, because when you see from outside, it's like you see the beautiful things, no, of everything, but when you see inside is when you say, wow, man, this is not clean, this is kind of dirty, no? It's like it's this house, no? Is when you go to a house of someone and the living room is super beautiful, and you're in a party, and then you open the door, incorrect door, and you see like a mess where they introduce all these things together.
It's like in Monica's house in France. Yes, she has a pretty apartment, but she has this particular door and no one is allowed to look.
More or less the same, because from outside you cannot see that, you see different things.
Yeah. Do you think this cloud waste and overspend increasing is related to the prices of cloud services, or because the cloud adoption is in general becomes better and more companies switch their services into the cloud? Like, what is the reason of this? The main reason? Do we witness this price increase, or we just witness that the more companies just in the cloud in general?
Prices more often than not for cloud providers go down and not go up.
Mm-hmm.
So AWS is famous for just slashing the prices regularly. Okay, not like in last 3 years, it's a bit less apparent, but before they were just like, okay, like now our compute costs less.
Cool.
And it doesn't really increase. It's rarely that they say just, oh, now like this particular compute type will cost more. It stays relatively stable. So it's probably more related to, as I say, like more companies are using it, and then more companies are making the same mistakes, and thus the whole cloud waste just grows.
The cloud tech industry is evolving so fast. Do you keep up with it by improving your skills or upskilling your team? At MKDev, we offer a variety of workshops for just that, from the basics to expert knowledge. Before delivering our workshops and training sessions, we carry out a detailed assessment of each participant. To make sure the workshop is helpful for you and your team, we will add more content to it or throw out what you already know. Or we create a custom workshop specifically for the needs of your team and the specifics of your project.
Speaking of mistakes, are there any practical steps do you think organizations should take to start seeing real cost savings? Because the same report also mentions kind of automated policies like shutting down workloads after hours, and monitoring resource usage, some of the most common strategies being implemented. But for me, it's like a lot of that, from what you mentioned, it is clear that a lot of organizations are still struggling to fully capture the potential savings.
There are many measures, and it really depends company by company what you can do. So you cannot, like if you take some big enterprise for 50,000 people, you will definitely handle the FinOps practices differently than a startup with 200 people. There are some really common technical ways to reduce the cost, like this automatic shutdown of like development and staging environments is extremely common, because you basically cut up to 70% of your costs on non-production environments. But even this is tricky to implement, because you cannot say that it's the best thing to do for every company, because it works really well if you're a company in one location or in a couple of time zones. But imagine you are, I'm not sure if you're a Spotify, for instance, or Shopify, both of them. You work globally and you have developers all over the world working remotely. You have European offices and you have US offices. So you cannot just shut down your dev infrastructure for the night, because when it's night in Europe, probably your US colleagues just like woke up and started working. So this does not apply, and you can use this particular cost optimization technique. So it varies a lot between what your company is doing, the size of the company, and so on. And it's not only technical. Yeah, you can do lots of technical optimizations of your cloud costs. You can add some automations. You can have like some automatic analysis of, like we had a video on infra cost, for example, that's a tool that shows you estimate of how much more or less you will start spending if you introduce particular infrastructure change. But it cannot be, because quite often there's like one or two guys who suddenly got interested into cloud costs with some mild commitment from the management to do this, and then they would do lots of things for the first 3-6 months, and then in 6 months maybe they have to switch to another project, or they have to, for whatever reason, decide to leave the company. And if at this moment there is no FinOps processes and framework implemented, then the cost will accumulate and the cloud waste will accumulate again.
I think this is a good moment to remind that we have our cost audit services, because if you think that not all the possible options are implemented and there is room for improvement, you know who to call. And by the way, we recently launched a free cost audit opportunity for a number of organizations. You need to fill the application form and tell us about your infrastructure and your cost reduction endeavors, and we will see if it matches, and we will be able to offer you a free cloud cost audit, and we will see how it will work for you. So just make sure to follow the link in the description and see if you can fit into this promotion. Another thing, like a major takeaway from this report by Flexera, is the whole widespread adoption of multi-cloud strategies among organizations. And before reading this report, I didn't know there is such a thing, and that I could think of, but I didn't think that it's so widespread. This is pretty interesting, because it's really highlight the big shift in how businesses are managing their cloud environment. And according to the report, like 89% of organizations are now using multi-cloud strategies, which is increase from the last year. And this showed that multi-cloud, it's not some kind of niche approach, and it's becoming the standard way for companies structuring their cloud architecture.
One point before we go to this multi-cloud organization, one thing with the cloud cost is only to understand is to understand that AWS or Azure, or whatever of these companies at the end, is a company who wants to make money. Okay. So, and at the end, it's like an alcohol company. I selling to you alcohol, but I making to you advertisement telling don't drink too much because it's bad for you. But I am the one who is selling the alcohol. At the end, it's the same. For example, AWS made a 37% operation margin in 2023, 90 billion. So it's a company who is telling to you don't spend, it's giving to you tools to don't spend, but at the same time, it's giving to you a lot of hints and a lot of news and a lot of themes to try themes and to spend money there. It's only that this is the gain of this company, because at the end, the company is telling to you don't spend money here, but at the end is, okay, please spend money because I need to make more money. only to give this one because it's like the good side and the good angel that you have in the shoulder, and the other shoulder is the one who is telling to you, spend money. So because at the end, like a company, they want to make money. And now about these hybrid modes, it's true that day by day you can see more and more this kind of connection between, for example, a data center, because there are many companies that are moving now from the old environments, like an old data center. I say all not because it's all, because the old concept of the data center. And they have, for example, now one cloud, and they need to do this network connection between those. Something like, for example, in this case, Google is very good on that. So, but I saw many times that theme. I saw many times when a company was in an old cloud environment like AWS, for example, and they want to move to another environment, like, for example, Azure, or they want to move to Google Cloud. And during a period of time, they have both at the same time together. But I cannot see too much these kind of companies where, imagine, 50% of the workload is in AWS and the other 50% is in Azure, and those loads are interconnected. And then I have this cluster in AWS, but the cloud function is in Azure. So these kind of themes at this level, you cannot see currently. What you can see is, for example, this line of the company code in AWS and this line go in Azure. Or I have few themes in one, and the big one is in this one. Or I have everything in the data center, and I'm moving step by step everything to the cloud. But I live in some themes that I cannot move out of the cloud. I live in the data center. So this kind of thing is what I saw, but not 30% of every load is in one of the big three. And then I having that. This, I never saw that in my case.
But it's true that currently I think every big company uses multiple clouds. And it's like, for example, AWS is the biggest one for sure, but in every company that uses AWS of big size, you will somehow find Azure always. In many cases, because all of the identity is usually kind of based around Azure with the Active Directory. And then if you have Active Directory, you eventually migrate to the Entra ID on Azure, which is the cloud version of Active Directory. So then you're already in this ecosystem of Microsoft. And then in last years, because maybe of Gen AI, you will try using this OpenAI Studio and other AI features in Azure, or maybe you will start using some other offerings they have, like for CSPM and so on. So it's rarely that you run the same application multiple times in different cloud providers. It's rather case by case. Another popular case is that you use AWS everything, but then for some machine learning and AI stuff, you use Google Cloud, because Google Cloud historically is really good with offering services for AI and machine learning with like BigQuery and other stuff that they have. Now it's a bit mixed because everyone forgot that Google Cloud was really good for AI. Now we think that AI is LLM, and because of this, we think that the best cloud provider for LLMs is either using OpenAI APIs directly or Azure. But for real, like general different kind of machine learning, Google Cloud used to be and still is a good choice. And many companies are kind of running workloads on Amazon, but then for data stuff using Google Cloud. And another point is what is the cloud and what we can consider the cloud offering, because for sure part of this is compute, how you run applications. But for instance, the whole observability stack with the logs, traces, monitoring is also part of the cloud. And then a company like New Relic or Datadog or AppDynamics, they are also the cloud. They just focusing on particular services, just for observability. They don't let you run workloads, but in the end, it's a separate cloud provider with a separate cost. And many companies don't use, for example, CloudWatch in Amazon, and they just use one of the tools I mentioned for monitoring. So they just get all the kind of data from Amazon Cloud, push it to observability cloud provider, and use this one for monitoring, alerting, and so on. And in this way, because all of these niche specific smaller cloud providers that focus on particular feature, be it security or observability or whatever else, they follow the same kind of principles of the cloud. So you have pay-as-you-go model, so you pay per gigabyte, per amount of magic, and so on. You can configure everything with APIs. So, for example, like in Datadog, you configure everything with the Terraform provider. And then that's also kind of this hybrid setup where you take parts of the features to another cloud provider that really focuses really well on some particular feature set.
Basically, if you use different tools, you are already multi-cloud because every other tool is now cloud. Because I have probably more primitive understanding of multi-cloud, and I thought that companies are using this for things like disaster recovery. Like if one of the clouds, fails, workloads can be shifted to another provider, ensuring like business continuity, or things like avoiding vendor lock by spreading loads across multiple providers. Companies are tied to just one vendor, giving them, negotiations opportunities and protect them from potential service disruptions if one provider has an outage or something like that. I thought that was the main reason why companies are going multi-cloud, but from what you said, it sounds like it's more of a necessity rather than a thing that they do by choice.
But for example, for a disaster recovery, sorry, Kirill. No, I only want to say that for disaster recovery could be a bit tricky to have the same infra that you have in one cloud provider like AWS and make a exact replica in another provider like imagine Azure. Could be something complicated.
Yeah, it's all like this part is on this, I think, mostly existing hypothetical space. Not many companies do it, but there are companies who are like, we want to be super independent from AWS, for example. Even though if AWS is down, half of internet is down. Like, yes, even if you find a way to deploy the same stuff to Google Cloud. And then if they go this way, they say, okay, now we only do open source and cloud native. We run everything on Kubernetes, and we try to make it in a way that we can deploy our whole infrastructure with infrastructure as code to any cloud provider that offers Kubernetes. In reality, like it can work. We can make it work, but then many small things will always differ because, for example, identity management on AWS, the EEM service, doesn't exist on Google Cloud, and that's an essential part of anything you do in AWS. Then you have to handle this part. For disaster recovery, in general, so that was like about vendor, like log in into a particular cloud provider. But for disaster recovery, it doesn't make too much sense usually. If you look at like an Pablo and I, we know some companies that maybe half of the particular industries in the world depend on, and they have just one data center. There is no, and they had it like for whatever 20 years. There was just like one data center, one particular location without any disaster recovery, and the rest is just hypothetical. But if you do need disaster recovery, then any cloud provider has like whatever 20 plus regions. So if you take Amazon, you have a region in Frankfurt, in Madrid, in Paris, in Milan, in Stockholm. So only in Europe, you already have by now like maybe 12 different AWS data centers. So it doesn't really make sense for you to do disaster recovery in another cloud provider because that's probably the most like costly way to do so. The problem is that in case of AWS, previously you had an issue that one data center in North Virginia is down and then the whole of AWS is down. But since then they refactor it. But it used to be that 2 or 3 really core parts of AWS, they are only hosted in this North Virginia data center. And then, for example, all the identity stuff goes through North Virginia, or used to go. I think they changed the architecture since then. And then no matter how many data centers you have, if this one is down, everything is down. But that's, again, it's a really, like, you can try to be prepared for this, but you cannot really, because could be that you have disaster recovery into Google Cloud, and then, I don't know, like, half of the root global root DNS service is down, then does not matter, half of DNS in the world is down. So any cloud provider suffers from this. Usually what I see for disaster recovery is that companies have a plan, and that's for compliance, that's what matters, that you have a plan. You don't have to have a real technical implementation that you can disaster recover into another place, but you need to have a document, steps by steps, what you do if Frankfurt AWS data center is down. As long as you have this plan, which says like, okay, we will do this, we will like load database dump, and we switch over the DNS, and it will take 20 hours. That's already good enough for disaster recovery.
No. What I want to say that at the end, when you have this multi-cloud, you need to think in the problem with the network, because when you want to send something, imagine that you're using pure multi-cloud with loads in different components. If you want to send connection from the multi-cloud A to the multi-cloud B, you don't want to go from internet. So this is something that you don't want to do. So then you have a problem, because then you need to have a wire, a cable from this data center in Virginia, whatever place, to the data center of the other cloud provider to have a real connection, not from internet. And this is not simple, because then you need to use VPNs, and you don't want to transfer all the information from your company from internet, because this is one of the things. And so this is one of the main problems when you want to do this loads interconnection between different cloud providers, that every company is different. You're not going to tell to the AWS, okay, I'm going to have cables interconnected with all the data center of Google Cloud and at the center of Azure. Then in this way, if our customers, they want to do this connection, they don't need to go through internet. They can go directly through a cable. Yeah, this is not working. So it's not working this way. You can do it. You want to do, for example, from your data center to your own cloud provider. This is something that the companies does. So you said, okay, I want to make a network interconnection between my data center that is located, imagine, in Frankfurt, to a Google Cloud provider, a Google Cloud data center. And then they go to the switches and they do the interconnection, and they do this connection between the data center and Google Cloud, and you don't go through internet. But between companies, it's not working, and this is a problem. So this is another problem with this multi-cloud thing. That is nice idea, but it's not a realistic idea, while the loads needs to go through VPNs.
But when it comes to data integration, like the same report says that there is a noteworthy increase in data integration, which jumped from 30-something% to 45% this year. And I think like this showed that companies, they aren't just using multi-clouds in isolation. Then they more like integrate their data and application across those environments. And I'm thinking about like how is it like what they do to make sure that their multi-cloud environments are not only effective but also secure, because you have to transfer data from one cloud to another. So I can assume that this is more headache than a benefit, like why companies do that, and this trend increases.
I cannot see in my experience, most of the cases when I see multi-cloud is divided by companies, by application. So this app is or this part of the organization is in one cloud provider. This other part is in another cloud provider. So it is what I saw. I never seen, I'm going to have an application spread in 3 cloud providers, and everyone is sending data to that. Could be cases, but in these cases, if you want to do that, is when you need to go to these cloud VPNs, because at the end there is no direct cables between those companies.
All right. Thank you, guys. This was interesting. I hope those who listen to us learned a little bit more, and you have more understanding and understanding of findings by Flexera, what they find in this report, read it, and then listen to this episode to understand it better. If you have more questions, where to find us, how to approach us, make sure to connect with us. And to be connected with us even better, make sure to be subscribed to our bi-weekly MKDev Dispatch newsletter, where we share everything we learn in past 2 weeks. And thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to us. Make sure to be subscribed for the next episode. We will see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye, everyone.
There are no challenges that we couldn't overcome. Whether it is immediate infrastructure problems or planning a future project, we won't simply answer your questions. We become a part of your team to help you complete the mission. Our solutions consider the interests of your business and the combined expertise of the industry, as our staff is made up of more than a dozen experts in different areas who share decades of field-tested experience and knowledge with you.